And so we have our like outline and things like that that we wanted to go over, but I wanted to know if there was like a specific place in the presentation that you had wanted to like carve out to talk about any specific anti-hate biases or things like that while I'm just loading this up.
Hold on, I'm trying to get on my computer. I'll be right there. Hold on.
Please take your time.
All right, cool.
Okay. Adam's jumping on his computer. I'm pulling up my outline
Okay,
and
there we are. What do you mean by specific anti-hate biases?
so you know that if we were talking about like I guess have there been reports of intersectional anti-hate biases from your like any anecdotal evidence that you wanted to add to the report when we're talking about like I guess community specifics? We addressed a few different, you know, we're going to touch on the fact that oh, thank you for making me a co-host, that queer folks you know exist through all facets of society and every single population, and you know especially with now there is a lot of anti-Semitism within several different facets of people's communities. You know, we're talking about and then talk about the issue with like than people being queer and Jewish or queer and Muslim or queer and Palestinian, you know, that then compiles onto their own specific identities.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to address the queer Jewish anti-Semitism that we've seen, especially the past month. Um, you know, if that's helpful or useful.
Okay. Mm, good thing.
But I mean, I guess I'm just like, how is this going to be integrated into the presentation? I mean, I think we need to be a little careful here too. You know, I think if we're going to discuss what's happening in the Middle East, I think you risk opening a big can of worms. And you know, my thought was we're really sticking to kind of what's happening in Montgomery County, um, and like getting support for the center and using that survey that came out. So I just be careful.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, when I think that in times like these, there is an uptick in the, you know, in anti-hate sentiments for different folks. I know that I have even seen just like when someone is being hateful, they're kind of being hateful in like multiple ways, you know, like by using multiple slurs with intersectional identities, like, you know,
Sure.
what along with my you know, being in spaces from some like young people who had, you know, very hateful thoughts. I've been called slurs that have been associated with queer people, Black people, and Jewish folks, you
Sure.
know, the worst of those. And so it's like
Yeah.
sometimes when people are even having conversations online, those identities that just because you happen to be one part of them, then they really try and harp down on that, you know, that when there is support for, I guess, any uh like any people, then if somebody is against that, then they kind of try and attack your one of your identities. So I
Sure.
guess looking to you to see what could possibly be a culturally competent way to also have those discussions. Um, but let me just open some.
I mean, I think it's just reminding people that all these kind of hatreds, you know, homophobia, transphobia, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, racism, misogyny, um, you know, blah blah blah. Like they're all related, and you know, I think people are. I mean, I'll speak personally. I've been in, you know, horrible grief since October 7th. And that's basically become like another full-time job on top of my full-time job, is taking care of my community. But you know, I don't know that we really need to say or do much more than that. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, my thoughts were, you know, that there's been a Jewish cohort that already presented. There's been a Muslim cohort that really presented. And I think it's like, I don't want to say like stick to the facts. And I hear that, I mean, I hear everything you're saying.
Yeah.
I just, you know, I think we really need to focus on the LGBTQ community, and while recognizing like pretty much you're LGBTQ and Black and Jewish and this and that, and that sometimes these identities can collide and cause division, like within our own community. I mean, there's, you know, there's queers on kind of every side of the Israel-Palestine issue right now.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
just think we want to be, we can recognize that, but I wouldn't go too deeply into that, I guess is what I'm saying.
It wasn't my
Absolutely.
impression that anyone was talking about the Israel-Palestine issue.
So that's what's been on my mind.
So I was actually specifically talking about like the hate that people are, the uptick in hateful language that people are receiving, and they're like compiling identities. Essentially, it's like it's the same type of rhetoric. I mean, you know, and I talk about fighting the anti LGBTQ stigmas in Black communities often, and in Caribbean communities as well, because that is a community that specifically needs those talks inside of them. And I know that even right now there are a lot of Muslim folks who are coming to us that like need youth support, because of the, you know, the hatred that they're facing. And when they're queer, they don't have a space inside of their community or inside like queer communities. So anywho, let me go ahead and share
so
my
I mean, look, I can give a quick thing about, I mean, again, it's like I'm a Reform Jew. We're pretty LGBT, you know, positive. We're not perfect, but there certainly are like elements of the Orthodox Jewish community. My husband grew up Orthodox, that are not, you know, that sounds similar to what you know, what you mentioned, Philip. So I mean, I'm happy to share a little about that, and that I would hope, I mean, there are Orthodox Jews in Montgomery County. I mean, there's a big pocket, for example, you know, in Kent Mill. And I would hope whatever advocacy we do, working to get the center together, you know, the things we've been talking about, that we can have outreach in that community. So someone who is queer and Orthodox, just like someone who's queer and Caribbean or queer and Muslim or whatever, knows they have like somewhere to go.
yeah.
Is that more
I
of
think that's what we're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah, like something very generalized, while it's like,
no
yes.
problem.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Good.
So let me go ahead and screen share now. Presentation on, there we go. Are you all getting my, okay,
Yep.
I'll try and move this around because I feel like,
Thanks
okay.
for putting all this together.
Yeah, it's no problem. So this is the outline. The presentation is going to be very pretty, and have like lots of pictures. And I'm between color schemes right now and kind of between like formats, but like the meat and potatoes of like all of the fun pictures and stuff, that's for like finishing work. What I really want to get through is the like, what are we doing for each of the slides? I know, Ali, that you have stuff that are going to go in, so this slide order will change, but I kind of just
Mm-hmm.
these like out here, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have our presentation on combating anti-LGBTQ plus biases, hate crimes, and promoting wellness in Montgomery County. The reason, you know, when we get back to all of this, it's simply about promoting like a better community and wellness within all of our communities. And when we start getting to the presentation, of course, all of these like hate crimes and anti-LGBTQ biases have effects on every single facet of life that someone will go through, from going to the doctors to seeking out I was going to say police care, to seeking out emergency care and first responders, and you know, help within the police, to food insecurity and job insecurity, and then also the way that we develop at our most vulnerable age inside of schools. Slide one, it has the title, and then we have our speakers.
And you have time to do all this and make all these slides and
Yeah, so like I use like a really cool formatting thing that I've always used, but like all of the help that I could get. So like in terms of going through this, I want each of us to kind of like pick out sections that we feel like, I mean, Ali already has sections because we meet constantly because we're on so many different groups together that that
right.
we constantly have to be in communication. And so we actually had a meeting last night and spoke about like what sides that we're breaking up together. But I wanted you to feel free, and when we're going through this, to jump in and say like, I'd like to take this, I'd like to add this in, I'd like to shake this up. Any suggestions you have, we're all here for it. So
I appreciate that. I mean, I'm not a good slide maker. I barely can do whatever it is PowerPoint, but I appreciate everything you guys are doing.
thank you.
It's the presentation the 7th. It's not the 11th, right?
No, it's the 9th.
Ninth.
It's the 9th.
The 9th.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I
So
thought.
it's next week, the 9th, which actually I'm slightly surprised because the African American and Black cohort that went last time, they utilized the entire meeting to present. And I actually was planning our presentation for around that length, including questions and answers, because we kind of like, you know, when I'm not going to talk about the other specific histories of the other diverse communities, because of the fact that they've already presented on them.
Right.
Their presentations are also integral to the anti-hate biases that we are talking about, because like we're specifically addressing them in every single community that they are also addressing them in. It just also has gender and sexual minorities that are also a part of those other groups that are facing those the same anti-hate or the same hate.
That might be a problem.
Huh?
Well, if we have two full presentations, like it's either going to be a long meeting or someone's going to get short shrift.
Exactly, and we're going last, so I actually wanted to ask Selena if there was like another presentation date that we would be able to go on.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, it's weird that my this particular Microsoft Word's coming up different, because I know I have typed that before, and that is the 9th. I don't know why I typed the 11th on that. And that is exactly why you asked that question. So welcome and gratitude to the audience, of course, the first slide. And then the background we will get into with Montgomery County, and Montgomery County, Maryland, a diverse progressive community, estimated LGBTQ population, 88,000 residents, 8% of households, history of legal protections and acknowledgements, which is kind of just like what's already set up in place. And then, like our Title IX in our schools, like the things that we already have going for the county. And it'll kind of become more clear when we go down that, like, yes, as I state in many different presentations throughout the county, that the resources are there, but are they accessible and are they implemented in a culturally competent way? And not all the resources are there, because of course having a physical center and county resources that are dedicated to combating the myriad of issues that LGBTQ people face, mitigate them, is also needed. So understanding our community. Okay, so then persisting challenges, despite advancements, which this is literally what I was just talking about. LGBTQ communities remain vulnerable. National anti-LGBTQ plus rhetoric and local legislation. So this part is kind of talking about how communities are moving here. and like what rhetoric is happening on the national level that trickles down into what we are fighting now. And we'll get more into that, of course, when we individually talk about the school system, as well as the police department and things like that. But we have, specifically been fighting well organized and well funded hate groups that have been functioning not only like within Montgomery County, but like in our school systems that are showing up to constantly to school board meetings and even hosting them inside of our public schools. Hosting their own meetings inside of our public schools. And so, when we're talking about like people feeling unsafe, if you were allowed to meet under the guise of I mean, when this is also another thing, and I guess this is a question kind of for Selena and Carmen, when we're talking about these things, like a group that, I mean, I don't know if the Southern Poverty Law Center has like officially named them as a hate group, but as Moms for Liberty, are they actually considered by like the NAACP and the SPLC? Okay, they are considered a hate group.
Pretty
Okay.
sure they're on. I'm pretty sure SPLCC has. I'm pretty sure Southern Poverty Law Center has.
Okay. Okay, because I just like, when we put that out there, like, because, I don't want to just be throwing around the word hate group, but like they are a well-funded hate group that we had to have a legal battle and challenge. I want to make sure that those are there. Exactly. So, we'll talk about that in like the very real the real situation of having to combat inclusivity in our schools and ensuring that the protections that are already built in are not rolled back, because that's what we're looking at and fighting currently.
Yeah.
Of course, the intersectionality of identities increases vulnerability to our populations. We all know that. That's what we're talking about. And then recent examples of discrimination. This says it's slide 4, but I'm actually going to change this because this is like slide 4 through, like, I have some anecdotal evidence that the Montgomery County Public School System gave me. And like of very recent reportings of young people in these situations, of anecdotal evidence where it says like, 7th grader, this person, this thing happened to them, so that we have some of that those things to back up with our persistent challenges. And then our community makeup, the LGBTQ community survey findings, and then key insights from the 2022 LGBTQ community survey, safety, discrimination, healthcare challenges, housing, and interactions with law enforcement. So if you all need me to, I know that I'm not going to ask if you've read the entire report because that would just be literally ridiculous. But if you would like to, I can go through and highlight the different pages. But like in the initial report on pages, I believe 2 through 4, it'll give you like a highlight of overall findings in terms of the disparities of discrimination, healthcare challenges, housing, and interactions with law enforcement. But then they have those specific pages that they're on where we can utilize them to make notes when we're giving that information about the survey findings, because fortunately the community survey like gauge the LGBTQ community survey that wanted to. And then what I wanted to talk about is I need to add one more to this, because it's not just the survey results, but it was who wasn't reporting. Because there are our most vulnerable communities are especially our trans communities of color and our queer communities of color, and our queer religious minority communities were not, actually, was that on the survey finding report? But anyway, those communities were not reporting in the survey, and we know through our programs and our health and STI testings, and our community like interactions that there are a lot of Black and brown queer folks and trans folks who do not feel comfortable reporting on surveys. And so like when we talk about like the makeup of the survey, I think it's also to report like who had the agency to report on the survey, and how they felt that you know, like if they felt that they would be able to safely and openly report, and even be a part of a survey like this. So then I also included in this the CDC LGBTQ plus youth report, which talked about the not only the violence within homes, but the violence within dating violence, and also just like community and societal violence towards LGBTQ youth and youth that identified as being queer and trans. Unfortunately, the CDC report did not specifically talk about trans and non-binary folks, and it just spoke about like it didn't recognize that as a category. And
Right.
so those folks are mixed in with individuals, but also like when you make forms and survey reporting that doesn't include our gender minorities, then you
Hmm.
also create an environment where they're not going to be able to report or feel safe in reporting. So
Hmm.
like that's something that you know, if whoever takes slide 6, I think that it's worth talking about, like the spaces where like, you know, identifying as Black is very easy for me because you're gonna know when you see me that I'm Black, and I've always been Black. I've been able to hide my queerness, and so
Hmm.
sometimes for us it's easier to hide our queerness than feel just another layer of stigma on top of our already stigmatized identities.
Right.
um, so that's all in there. And then of course the HIV and AIDS risk. I think that when we're talking about fighting anti-hate and anti-LGBTQ biases, those systems of total wellness, we should also kind of touch on them, that like when we're fighting anti-hate bias within the police, you're providing a space where people can seek out emergency help. When you're fighting anti LGBTQ bias within the healthcare system, and all of this of course is fighting anti Black bias, anti Jewish bias, anti-Muslim bias. Like it compiles with each of them. And then getting into our policy recommendations, the urgent need for policy changes, and to so I wrote countywide cultural competency training for all services. I know that this
Hmm.
might be crazy, but I feel like it's needed, and I know it's an
Hmm.
implementation thing, but like it just is needed. You know, we need we like, if you go into one level of service and your director is amazing at doing their job and they are so queer competent, but then you get to the front desk person and they're like they've never seen a trans person, it's
Yeah.
not it's never gonna happen. So
Right.
so across it all, recognizing the compounding effects of intersectionality, we're all going to see that throughout this presentation.
Right.
Promoting inclusivity in schools, providing professional development for school staff, that is so freaking huge.
Yes.
It's so needed. Identifying safe spaces and implementing anti-harassment policies, that is already across MCPS. I think that it's more so the, oh gosh, it's implementing the policies. And so I don't really know how to like, because it is, the policies exist. It is the implementation of them that I'm finding that I'm having an issue with. So I don't really know how to say, because they are implemented, but like do it better. I just want to I want to figure out of course a very professional way of talking about how that we can work together to ensure that like, and that's across all levels, like not just within the student body, but within the administration and within the teaching body as well. Because if teachers don't feel safe being queer or trans, or they actively don't like their queer and trans colleagues, then
Hmm.
that's going to trickle down into their teaching and how they feel about students who
Hmm.
may present as a gender or sexuality minority.
Right.
Yes. Then 10, inclusive health education, advocating for inclusive health education in schools, bringing the knowledge gap on LGBTQ health and wellness, bridging the knowledge gap on LGBTQ health and wellness. Because like, of course, right now the everything focus on everything that's heteronormative, and then anything outside of that is considered queer. Um, so to speak. And so ensuring that like queerness isn't seen as odd or weirdness, as the terms suggest. And then county government recommendations establishing, of course, physical LGBTQ plus community center, expanding satellite programming to reach diverse communities, ensuring that resources and services are accessible to all people.
Mm-hmm.
And then reporting and tracking, comprehensive tracking and reporting of anti-LGBTQ biases, hate crimes, and anti-BIPOC violence. So this actually, I mean, I could have put it before or after, but it's like it's tracking and reporting like through NCS, and then also having a safe space to report within the police department, like their own police department being able to report biases against their
Right.
own officers in safe
Mm-hmm.
spaces. That's also within our teaching spaces. So all government funded programs should have the ability to track and report anti-LGBTQ biases, anti-hate hate crimes, and anti-BIPOC and anti-religious and I guess cultural minority bias as well. So however I write that anti-religious bias. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Biases. Right, perfect. And then monitoring progress towards equitable outcomes. Of course, that's very loaded, and I was thinking about taking it out because we could talk forever about the more equitable outcomes. But I think it's worth like if there's a way for just a summation of that very quickly to what those equitable outcomes can look like.
Mm-hmm.
Then I think that that's worth it. A
Mm-hmm.
call to action for more inclusive Montgomery County and expression. I always like to end the conclusion off in like this like message of love and hope, where it's like we're literally teaching like humanity and like advocacy for like all people. And we know that starting with the people who are most underserved, who are most marginalized, will then lift up everyone else. If the person who's doing the worst has at least the basic resources, then we're all doing well. And so, and then of course, an expression of gratitude to LGBT communities and allies, and a vision for a brighter future, and building on acceptance and diversity. And then of course, our questions and discussions, and then yes, inviting the audience and providing contact information for further discussions. So that's everything. And I don't know why I wrote thank you at the end, like, oh yeah, for my personal notes, thank you. Remember to say thank you again. So that's everything. So I guess we can kind of talk about like I said, like Adam, where you feel like you want to go in and grab some stuff. We can like shake up where I already said that Ali and I kind of split things together, but where I now that you're in this space, I want you to of course be able to grab some things, whatever you feel like the space would be good for.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for putting all this together. You guys have done the lion's share of the work. I feel like I've been along for the ride. So I'm really just, wherever you want me, I'm happy to do. I'm happy to do, as little as you want, as much as you want. Just let me know. I don't really have a strong preference.
Yeah, definitely. I think that when after this meeting, we can I'll type in, I kind of like as I go through items, I'm like, how many minutes for each one? So I kind of want to do some timing things so we can talk about like where our timing should be at as well. And I know that Ali, like I'm gonna stop talking to him because I know that you have lots that you can add and give as well, but like when we're thinking about this, let's also think about like what our timing is. And I know that Selena will most likely be in at around like 150-ish or something like that. I think that she typed in the message around like 147. And so I can kind of ask about like what our timing will be, because if we do have to share, it does, as you all know, I'm long-winded as
Oh,
so it
good.
kind of throws things up. I want to see that as well.
This is important, so gotta make sure we have time to do it.
Absolutely.
So I was going to say that I think I see some spaces where we can maybe partner some of the slides if we do have to think about time, or like make suggestions to in our policies just to strengthen the things that are already there. Like I noticed the health in the schools. I believe that MCPS already does offer health, that curriculum that well, I know that they do just because I'm seeing my son's health curriculum that's inclusive. um, I do believe though that it is about that is variable depending on the health teacher you have, depending on the school climate. So really making sure that we talk about how teachers and professionals in the school that are LGBTQIA can feel comfortable in their positions in the school, and how the school is a brave space for LGBTQIA people may open up a space for those inclusive health education classes to be more viable for the learning that the curriculum already has, because it's actually a pretty good curriculum. It just, yeah, it just is. I mean, he's getting a great curriculum at Walter Johnson. I'm sure that the curriculum is kind of standard, but it just depends on, what's happening, in the classroom and what the school is doing. So, yeah. So I think that like that's one of the where we might want to focus in our policy recommendation is how do we determine what is the outcome of the curriculum? What is like, are students getting something that they can give back to say, this curriculum was good, this curriculum wasn't, it was helpful, it wasn't helpful. I learned something, I didn't learn something, I felt comfortable in receiving it, I didn't. Do you know what I mean? Because if we don't have any feedback about the curriculum, if the curriculum isn't qualitatively being evaluated, then we just have curriculum. Um,
I'm still getting used to finding like my mute and stuff button when I'm in full screen presentation and sharing mode. So yeah,
yeah.
I agree. And so within those spaces, because you have kids in the school system, so this is actually very helpful. So what outcomes you as a parent, like I guess what outcomes would you like to see that would make, because I know that the tracking of reporting, and I wanted to know, and I'm gonna ask Yael this, but I wonder if you know this well, like this is a two-part question. What outcomes would you see that would be helpful in making a more inclusive environment for all students, LGBTQ folks, and families. And then the second part of that question is what um are there spaces like, do you find that like it's basically like we need to just keep the things happening that are like basically go further with the implementation of already good policies and that the implementation is done correctly, or do you see that there's like a need for like better policies or better inclusion in spaces and things like that?
Well, I don't know about every school, but I think that just, and this is anecdotally, like because I have a heterosexual son, um, so I don't know how youth are feeling in school who are, you know, receiving the education who are LGBTQIA, but I do know from his experience how he's receiving the education. He's more open to talking about, you know, what it means for like one of the questions that the curriculum asks is, you know, how do we make space more inclusive? And one way, it asks something about like, what do you do when you find that someone is being singled out? I think is the word, but I'm not sure. For them being like queer, they don't use that word, but basically that's what it is. So it's asking students to think critically about how to be inclusive of difference. But I could see like being a queer kid if the teacher, it will all depend on how the teacher was teaching the curriculum. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So if you have a teacher who is open and affirming, it would be like the class would be that way. But if you have a teacher who is not, it could just be like very rote and like we're checking off a box. So I don't know how you kind of make that uniform. I think it's a school culture. Like we have to look at what the culture of the school is in each instance and make sure that we're addressing school culture when it comes to um, LGBTQIA students, students of the global majority, students who are seen as different or other. Yeah.
Yes. What from that, what policy recommendations could we give? Like, I mean, I just feel like teachers need more time, like not just like together, but like more of their own time to do professional development. You know what I mean? Because
I.
their like day to
Mhm.
day is so hardcore, just filled with like students front to back. Then they get home, they have to like grade papers all the time. It's like, when do I even have time to read a book about inclusion? You know, it's like, or belonging, or learn something else that I may not have learned in the liberal arts school that I went to.
Yeah, I wonder though, and this is a question I don't know the answer to, when they are receiving professional development about like LGBTQIA issues, what are the who are they receiving it from? Are they receiving it from people inside LGBTQIA spaces who are knowledgeable about the community, you know, or are they receiving, you know, is it from, you know, just a company that says we do diversity training? Do you know what I mean? Because that makes a difference. And then also, when you talk about professional development, is the professional development they're receiving something that will be helpful to them in their classrooms? Not just like this overall, this is what it means to be LGBTQIA, and this is what you should do, but like real praxis learning, I think is important. And that's like learning by doing. So where they're actually able to um, use what they learn and be able to like actually role play it or whatever, so that they can get comfortable dealing with, working with, you know, these issues. Also, I think that and I think we talked about this before, it comes to like who in the school is the authority for this group of students. Like, who can this group of students go to if there's an issue? Who can a teacher go to say, I've noticed this group of students is having this issue. Can they talk to you about this? Can you be the trusted 3 people, or you know what I'm saying? Um, or I'm having this issue and I don't know what to do about this. Can I get some extra help with learning these tools? I think that is helpful too.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I mean, I almost want to like give a policy recommendation of like more professional development days for teachers because like it
Mhm.
literally is like something that's needed be in that cultural competency piece.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know how we write in that these things should come from the community, but like hiring a diversity firm who says that they do X, Y, and Z where they don't know, but just because they're a large institution, then like
Right.
Montgomery County feels comfortable with hiring them instead of like going to one of our like the Project Smile around here or Moco Reconnect or literally Live in Your Truth, like to
Mhm.
or to Reverend Ali from the Unitarian Church or to
Mhm.
Rabbi Adam, like who could actually speak to not only what we are hearing from like the constituents, like in our specific communities and our service bases,
Mhm.
who are very much so here, but like what we see as community members who actively operate in this community space, who we reach and see LGBTQIA folks. So it's like
Mhm.
maybe like the recommendation is also like community-based, culturally competent training
Right.
that we seek to have.
Mhm.
Also, I don't know if you all saw, but I was like, I hate just showing you this and not having a real-time working document. So I shared a Google Drive document that's real-time working.
Yes.
So that when we type in anything on there, feel free, if you want to type your name by a slide, feel free to, or like highlight or delete anything that you'd like to. And by delete, I mean put the cross through just so that we can
Mhm.
see editing changes. But like now that we're all over this real time working document, we can add in any of those changes. And I think one of my check marks went out that I changed, ensuring expanding satellite program. Oh, that one. It was bridging the knowledge gap on LGBTQ health and wellness. That's the one I wanted to. That's that you suggested that I think that is great taking out. Thank you, Ali. Um, yeah, I like that. The recommendation of MCPS like having more professional development days and also community-based culturally competent training.
Mhm. Unfortunately, I actually need to take my partner to urgent care. She woke up pretty sick this morning, so her appointment is at 2. So I was kind of glad. I was like, this is on my calendar for 2, but hey, look at God. So,
I love it. I love it. This
so
worked out
I
well.
I
So
need
we
to
had a
go.
chance to go through the presentation. I will send an update with like names by slides. If you don't feel comfortable, please send me back something. Or if you want to
Yeah.
be, I want this one, let me know. And then we will we'll keep it moving. But thank you all so much for
Thank you.
meeting
Yes,
today
Kimberly.
and
Thank
your
you.
suggestions. Awesome. Take
Okay.
care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye, you all. I'm sorry,
Oh,
go ahead.
Carmen, I was going to ask if Selena is available. I actually have like a kind of like ethics question that I have to ask her. That like has to do with like just like services and our recommendations and things like that because of the fact that like any of these recommendations, because of all the advocacy work that Lee and myself do, could affect our organizations. And so I kind of wanted to talk to her because it's like, our ethical training is very clear, but it's like if only 5 people are doing the work throughout the county, you can't really get around people being on boards and also doing the work. You know what I mean? So
Right,
I just want to
right.
cover that stuff.
Oh, here she is.
This is
That was
awesome.
right.
All right, I'm going to head out. Thank
All
you.
right. Take
Right.
care,
And
Adam.
I'm going to drop 2 now, Philip. So since Selena's here to answer your question.
Awesome. Carmen, so nice seeing you. You have
Nice seeing you too.
have a
All right.
wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Bye.
Thanks, Carmen.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.
Hey,
Hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing so well. So I had a question.
Yeah.
And this is, and I may need to call the county ethics office as well, but the ethics has to do with our policy recommendations and then the organizations that we serve on. So like, like Ali and I are both co-chairs for the Coalition for Inclusive Schools. We also, like, I'm the executive director for the MoCo Pride Center and for Living Your Truth. And then I work with some in Montgomery County public television stations or other people who do work that's specifically involved with like all the direct LGBTQ causes. So, like the Department of Health and Human Services, we work with them to put on Pride and stuff like that. So some of the county recommendations that we're giving for like a Montgomery County Pride Center, like we, the individuals, not only who we've been sourcing all of the information from, but that we work with, like myself and Reverend Ali and Lee Blender and those folks who have all been helping throughout this process. Are also the people who do all of the work in the county. And so if we're talking about bolstering the county resources and then our policy recommendations, then them following them and giving money to the county, like, is that then an ethics violation since we are recommending them?
Oh.
Okay, because I'm just like that one part was like, because in our ethics training, it's like if like I'm in charge of the MoCo Pride Center, if we're working with the county right now to try and build a Montgomery County Pride Center, like what is it a bad thing that like through this task force, because we need a Pride Center and that's why the county's working with us, like, and we recommend it, like, are we doing something that is like unethical? Because I'm not saying it's enriching the Pride Center, but funding could potentially go to the Pride Center. That's what we're hoping will happen, that
Yeah.
we can have a robustly funded Montgomery County Pride Center, instead of just satellite resources.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you go ahead and make all of your recommendations, and then, if there's an ethics issue down the road, then that will come up during a committee session, a work session, and a conversation with the council president, the county executive. I think you go ahead and make your recommendations.
Okay,
I
cool.
mean, and it's telling that, the same people are involved in the same projects, are involved in the same process, are involved in the anti-hate task force. I mean, what does that mean too? So yeah, make
Yeah,
your
I know, and
recommendations.
I always tell them that like there are people who, like, I know right now, like if we had the money, I could give a dozen people like full-time jobs who are qualified, who are very
Mm-hmm.
qualified and who would do the work and they would be great at the work. But like I cannot ask like very underserved and very oppressed folks to come and work for free.
Yeah.
And so like when we're in these spaces, it's like, I barely have the agency to show up the way that I do. And so I know that of course, like we need the services, but I'm always like, who's actually reporting? Because it's like we can have culturally competent services, but are we like funding those initiatives? And hopefully
Mm.
through this, we are going to be funding those culturally competent folks and entities and put people in like the right positions who are really able to like affect change that like our community feels really good about it. And I mean our community by like Montgomery County in general, because
Mm-hmm.
like those are the spaces, like I always tell people, like, could you imagine if like the people who were like the poorest, who didn't have houses, who didn't have food, who didn't have education, like had all of those things, like had free healthcare, had great, because that means every other person is going to be doing so much better.
Yeah.
So like I feel like, if we start with those folks who, those are the communities that we're working with, really like Black and brown trans folks and non-binary folks who literally, can't get jobs because they're first, the barrier to access could be names, could be the way they look, like
Mm-hmm.
professional environment. So, all those things, having a home and actual address to be able to put on a job application.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, awesome. Well,
Yeah.
we had a good meeting. The
Good.
outline looks great. And we are like, I'll share it with you, but all of the slides are completely sussed out, and it's going to be a good presentation. Now I just get to make it pretty and choose a good color scheme.
Yeah. Do you
Yes.
all need another meeting or are you done?
I think that we are done until the 9th. I know that I'm gonna meet with them independently, but I don't know if I can get them both in the room together just because of their busy schedules. So yeah.
Well,
Awesome.
okay. Well, let me know if you need me.
I wanted to ask you about our presentation time. So I had actually planned our presentation for like 30 minutes and then Q&A sessions, but we are presenting with another group. Have you gotten a sense of how long the other group's presentation is going to be? Because I just wanted to make sure that we were able to touch on each of the points that we wanted to make. And then also, if not, like if it did seem like theirs was going to take like, I mean, more than half or pretty much around half, like, is there another day that we're able to present?
No, there isn't, because we're going to run out of time since, everybody needs to be done by the end of November. So each of you have your 30 minutes plus your 15 minutes of Q&A. And so they'll just come behind you and do the same thing. And they know that, I met with them last night and it is what it is. So I wouldn't worry about your time or your presentation or anything. Just do you.
Okay, perfect. I love it. Awesome.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited. I'm
Yeah.
really. Do you all have materials around mental health, by the way? Mental health and LGBTQ community?
I don't have, I mean, I have like, do you mean materials for like our service population or material for this presentation?
Uh,
Both?
neither.
Okay.
Yeah, people are asking questions. So what is happening in Montgomery County? And so I reached out to DHHS this morning, but I didn't know if there was specific information materials about the LGBTQA community.
No, there
Interesting.
isn't, unfortunately. Like, Lee Blender tries to have some with Trans Maryland in terms of like, just like these are community-led and peer-led support groups, but like there isn't, and people have been trying to seek them out. And so it's like, it basically has been like an individual provider type of thing, like shopping around to find if your provider is going to be LGBTQIA friendly and culturally competent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so unfortunately, no. Yeah, okay. Well, something else to literally work on.
This is
Yeah, to identify individuals within health departments who are who even identify as like experts or just culturally competent so people don't get re-traumatized. I can't tell you, there aren't enough times where like if I don't have like a provider who is like, I'm sometimes scared to be in a provider who might be like, I'm like, oh no, is this going to be like an older Black person who's going to look down on me for being LGBTQ? And so, that's just like within my community, but I also need them to be Black, because I feel like if they are a mental health provider that don't realize the struggle and trauma that Black people have who were born in the United States or who live here, I feel like you're not really coming from a frame of reference if you don't have that lived experience. So like I'm always looking for like a very particular type of like service provider. So yeah, shopping around is difficult.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All righty. Well, you have a wonderful rest of your day and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
All righty. Take
See
care.
you.
Bye.